NBC is one of America's oldest broadcasting organizations, so it'll come as no surprise to find that the company has endured a few controversies over the years. From celebrity outbursts to sinister cover-ups, these are the biggest scandals to hit NBC. Since its 1952 premiere, The Today Show has grown into an NBC mainstay. Starting in 1994, Today was helmed for over 20 years by Matt Lauer, one of the network's biggest names, who helped the show reach the heady heights it enjoys to this day. Lauer was also among the highest paid people in news media, earning $20 million a year through his last contract in 2016. That was his last contract because the next year, NBC fired Lauer after a review of his behavior prompted by a colleague's accusation of sexual misconduct. In a statement, NBC News chairman Andy Lack said, "On Monday night, we received a detailed complaint from a colleague about inappropriate sexual behavior in the workplace by Matt Lauer. It represented, after serious review, a clear violation of our company's standards." Among the many creepy details reported by Lauer's colleagues was the fact that he had a button installed at his desk to remotely close and lock the door to his office, which at least 2 women said Lauer used while alone with them in his office. Far more lurid and damaging stories about Lauer emerged 2 years later. Vanity Fair reported that a former NBC News assistant had accused Lauer of sexual assault and claimed NBC had covered it up. The assistant said she had repeatedly told her NBC colleagues and superiors about the attack, but that nothing ever came of it. Billy Bush is a junior member of the Bush dynasty, cousin to a governor and a president, and nephew to another president. But this Bush pursued a career outside of politics and has been a successful radio and television personality for over 20 years. That all came crashing down, however, when, during his time on Access Hollywood, Bush had a very candid, behind-the-scenes chat with then-TV celebrity Donald Trump. The recording of this meeting went down in political history when it was publicly revealed 10 years later in the run-up to the 2016 presidential election. By 2016, Bush had joined NBC's Today Show, and Donald Trump had become the Republican candidate for president. Just a month before Election Day, barely a year after Bush had joined Today, the audio of Bush and Trump's conversation was leaked to the media. In the recording, Bush can be heard laughing as Trump explains how his fame allows him to freely grope and harass women. NBC fired Bush before the end of the weekend. He later told CBS, "It was leaked on a Friday, and then Sunday morning I walked to go back to work, and the driver said, 'I'm sorry, they've canceled the car.'"
Called my lawyer and said, "We okay?" And he said, "Nope."
Bush now works at Extra, an entertainment news show, where he uses his experience of getting fired to secure interviews with celebrities who have likewise experienced public scrutiny. For many decades, Harvey Weinstein was one of the most powerful people in Hollywood. Just a few years ago, however, he became the principal villain of the Me Too movement after being accused and convicted of multiple sex crimes. Journalist Ronan Farrow's expose on Weinstein did more than reveal Weinstein's atrocious conduct, however. It also revealed the pernicious influence he had in the media. According to Farrow, Weinstein's behavior was an open secret. At the time, he wrote, "Weinstein and his associates used non-disclosure agreements, payoffs, and legal threats to suppress victims' accounts." Furthermore, Farrow alleged that NBC had been covering up for Matt Lauer for years, that Weinstein knew about it, and that he had used blackmail to dissuade NBC from reporting on his own crimes. Entertainment journalist Paula Froelich later told WNYC that she personally witnessed an example of Weinstein's corrupting status in the media in 2000 when he assaulted a journalist at a party in front of other journalists and nobody reported on it. She said, "People don't want to report on the table, they want a seat at it." Biran Williams is an old-school newsman. He started reporting almost immediately after dropping out of college before joining NBC News in 1993, where he would stay for the rest of his career. He rose to become anchor of the network's premier news program, NBC Nightly News, in 2004, garnering several Excellence in Broadcasting awards over the following decade. Nightly News brought in an average of 9 million to 10 million viewers a night, and Williams was one of the highest paid people in news. Over time, however, a number of Iraq war veterans began publicly questioning a story that Williams liked to tell about being shot at in a helicopter.
2 of our 4 helicopters were hit by ground fire, including the one I was in.
No kidding.
RPG and AK-47.
He was also accused of inventing stories about his experiences in New Orleans following Hurricane Katrina. Before long, other outlets had begun examining Williams' reporting, and NBC quickly launched an investigation. In a memo to NBC personnel explaining why he was being suspended and demoted, NBC News president Deborah Turnus said, "Brian misrepresented events which occurred while he was covering the Iraq War." After a 6-month suspension, Williams returned to the air as an anchor on MSNBC, where his $10 million annual salary remains intact. Despite billions of dollars invested in advertising and infrastructure, hundreds of millions of people watching, and tens of thousands of spectators in the stands, the 1996 Atlanta Olympics has become known for only one thing: death. 29-year-old Eric Robert Rudolph, enraptured by hateful right-wing propaganda, planted a series of bombs at the Olympic venues. 1 person was killed in the blasts, and over 100 more were injured. Richard Jewell was a former cop and security guard at the Olympics. He alerted authorities to a suspicious package stuffed beneath some bleachers. A bomb squad was called in and the area evacuated right before the device exploded. At the 10th anniversary of the Atlanta Olympics, the Georgia governor honored Jewell for his heroism on the night of the bombing. Before his bravery was recognized, however, Jewell was subject to an intense media spectacle that painted him as the terrorist. In the wake of multiple media reports suggesting he was involved with the plot, Jewell sued the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, Tom Brokaw and NBC News, CNN, The New York Post, and Time magazine. Some of Jewell's lawsuits were thrown out, but NBC was among those who settled, reportedly paying him over $500,000, far more than the nuisance value that is usually offered to potential plaintiffs. One of America's Big 3 news anchors for 2 decades, legendary broadcaster Tom Brokaw started out with NBC in 1966 and only announced his retirement in January 2021. He's penned several best-selling books over the years and has received numerous awards in journalism. Brokaw was also the only anchor to have helmed all 3 of NBC News' flagship programs: Today, Nightly News, and Meet the Press. In 2014, Brokaw was even awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the highest honor a president can bestow on a civilian, by President Obama. But 5 years later, he stoked up a damaging controversy for his network when he was made to apologize for telling Latinos to learn English. During a live panel discussion on NBC's Meet the Press regarding then-President Trump's proposed border wall in 2019, Brokaw repeated a number of racist sentiments from people he had spoken with. Brokaw went on to argue,
I also happen to believe that the Hispanics should work harder at assimilation. That's one of the things I've been saying for a long time.
The online backlash was swift, and NBC's social media was flooded with angry excoriations of Brokaw's statement as ignorant at best, if not outright xenophobic. Brokaw later took to Twitter himself to say, I am sorry, truly sorry my comments were offensive to many. The great enduring American tradition of diversity is to be celebrated and cherished. In 2012, the 17-year-old Trayvon Martin was shot and killed by Geroge Zimmerman. Prior to the shooting, Zimmerman had been following Martin and even called 911 to report Martin as suspicious. In their coverage of the events, NBC aired what many people called an edited, out-of-context cut of that 911 call. During their broadcast, Zimmerman is heard saying,
"Guy looks like he's up to no good. He looks black."
What NBC's viewers didn't hear, however, was that Zimmerman's assertion that Martin was black had actually been made in response to the 911 dispatcher asking,
Okay, and this guy, is he white, black, or Hispanic?
He looks black.
After the segment aired, NBC publicly apologized to Zimmerman, saying that it became evident that there was an error made in the production process that we deeply regret. NBC fired at least 3 journalists involved in allowing the edited call to air. Zimmerman then sued NBC for defamation, alleging that NBC's editing made him appear to be a racist, which exposed him to public ridicule and led to his own emotional distress. 2 years after Martin was killed, a judge threw out Zimmerman's lawsuit. The court ruled that, since he had pursued a course of conduct that ultimately led to Martin's death, Zimmerman had become a public figure. As such, he needed to prove that the network had acted with malicious intent, which is the standard required to prevail in a libel suit involving a public figure. The sitcom 30 Rock was an award-winning, long-running star of NBC's primetime lineup. Running for 7 seasons, 30 Rock was a satirical take on the experiences of the show's star, writer and producer Tina Fey, as head writer for another NBC property, Saturday Night Live. The crew of 30 Rock was dotted with SNL alumni, from the writing staff to the producers, but most notably by Fey's fellow star comedian Tracy Morgan. Although Morgan only played a supporting role on the series, he frequently stole the show and quickly became a fan favorite. Unfortunately, he was just as prone to making the wrong kind of headlines as his character.
I'm saying the Disneyfication of New York is over, everyone. At the stroke of midnight, your Lexus is going to turn back into a hot pile of rats fighting over a human finger.
Morgan got his start as a stand-up comedian and never stopped performing live, even while filming 30 Rock. At a 2011 comedy show in Nashville, Morgan made a joke that was widely criticized as homophobic, and NBC was quick to distance themselves from their star's comments. One NBC executive said at the time, "Tracy's comments reflect negatively on both 30 Rock and NBC, two very all-inclusive and diverse organizations, and we have made it clear to him that this kind of behavior will not be tolerated." Morgan apologized as well, and Fey publicly said she hoped his apology would be accepted. However, she also added, "Stand-up comics may have the right to work out their material in its ugliest and rawest form in front of an audience, but the violent imagery of Tracy's rant was disturbing to me." Seinfeld was a juggernaut in sitcom history. Over its 9 seasons, the infamous Show About Nothing was nominated for 186 different awards, winning 74, including 27 Emmys. And the show has staying power too. When Hulu had exclusive rights to Seinfeld, the average age of their viewers was just 27 years old, someone who would have been in the 2nd grade when Seinfeld's finale first aired. The show has since moved to Netflix, as part of a deal for which Jerry Seinfeld was paid over $100 million. Vulture has even calculated the worth of the Seinfeld financial empire as over $3 billion since it first entered syndication. And although the show's various cast members have stirred up their fair share of controversies over the years, Seinfeld itself was actually relatively scandal-free. There is, however, one outlier: the episode in which Kramer burns a Puerto Rican flag by accident. At the time, the president of the National Puerto Rican Coalition said, "It is unacceptable that the Puerto Rican flag be used by Seinfeld as a stage prop under any circumstances." The Puerto Rican Day story sparked such outrage that everyone involved officially apologized, even though many of the show's cast and crew insisted that the episode wasn't offensive at all. NBC clearly disagreed, however, and pulled the episode from syndication for 4 years. Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more grunge videos about TV scandals are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.